While President Trump is saying, let's come to the table and negotiate as equal, we need to celebrate that. When we lose on that battlefield, the joke is on us. So African leaders, I am saying, wake up. A new era is being introduced. Let's take advantage of it.
This is The Journey.
Hi, I'm Steve Clemons, and I have a question. After Trump's mini-summit with 5 African heads of state, what changes in U.S. engagement with Africa? Let's get to the bottom line. The new dynamics of Africa-U.S. relations was on vivid display this month when U.S. President Donald Trump hosted the leaders of 5 Western African countries: Senegal, Liberia, Mauritania, Gabon, Guinea-Bissau. Collectively, these countries represent about 2% of Africa's population. Trump said his country was shifting from aid to trade and focused on the, quote, great minerals and great oil deposit that they have. In return, he received heaps of praise and requests to invest more in Africa. But in the background, China remains the continent's top trade and investment partner. The U.S. footprint continues to shrink. African leaders worry about Trump's tariffs, and America worries about the flood of young people in Africa who are trying to flee their countries for a better future. So what does Trump and the Trump White House aim to achieve in Africa, and what does Africa want from the relationship? Today we're talking with Adikana Chihombori-Quao, the former ambassador of the African Union to the United States. Ambassador, it's great to have you on the show again. So July 9th, 5 African leaders in the White House with President Donald Trump. And I just want to know from you how you saw it went. And I want to put a preamble. When I interviewed you a couple of years ago, when President Biden was in there meeting African leaders, you thought it was a disaster. So what was your take on this meeting?
Well, this meeting, unfortunately, it did not go as well as we had anticipated as Africans. However, I see it as a step in the right direction when President Trump is inviting African leaders for a conversation to do with trade. This is an opportunity that African leaders were not awarded by the colonizers, the European nations, when they set out to exploit the continent of Africa. I see it as an opportunity for the African leaders to see a pathway where they can actually truly negotiate the trade between their nations and the United States in a fair and equitable manner. President Trump's global politics, geopolitics, his policies when it pertains to trade, I think it's opening a new era, a new chapter for Africa, an opportunity for the Africans to go onto the world stage and trade with the most powerful country on earth in a manner that they can also put not only their national agenda forward, not only their regional agenda forward, but also the continental agenda. What we are experiencing today on earth, the environment that has been created by President Trump, is an environment that may the best men win. If the African leaders come to the United States and they fail to come up with a deal that is going to truly represent the wishes of their countries, then the joke is on the leaders. So yes, I do see President Trump inviting African leaders to come to the negotiating table as a step in the right direction. It is now up to the African leaders as to how well they are in negotiating with one of the best deal makers that we have so far on the world stage. It's now up to the African leaders to deliver.
So let me ask you a question. President Trump has been very overt. He said, look, you leaders have minerals I want. You've got gold and cobalt and lithium, oil and gas, and America needs those things. He also said you could be safe third countries where America could take migrants, illegal migrants out of the United States and ship them to other countries to kind of do this. I don't know where that stands. But Trump is actually being very overt, saying out directly what he wants. I'm interested from your perspective, having represented the African Union, how is this different? Is this the kind of respect and relationship you think Africa needs? Do you think it's missing some elements? I'm just sort of interested in the transactionalism and whether it feels right.
I really think, basically, I like the idea that President Trump is willing to come to the negotiating table. However, if African leaders are going to come to the United States, like President Ramaphosa did, where he clearly looked like a beggar, wherein lies the problem. President Trump is a deal maker. If you look at the manner in which he treated President Ramaphosa and his team, President Ramaphosa and his team clearly were not prepared. They should have known they're coming to negotiate. They should have had their game plan together. And so I would blame President Ramaphosa for coming to the United States unprepared. May the best man win. That's what this moment is calling for. President Trump, of course, is going to want to negotiate the best deal for his country, but these African leaders must come also prepared. My position would be African leaders should come and meet with President Trump, hear what he has to say, go back and re-strategize, come up with your game plan, and then give feedback. If you are not prepared, you need to make sure that this moment is calling for free trade as nations in an equitable and fair manner. Now, if you end up with the short end of the stick as an African leader, the joke is on you. There are lots of intelligent, brilliant Africans who can come in and negotiate with the Americans. President Trump and his team are going to kick your rear, and they don't play. And the African leaders need to know that. So they need to realize when they come to negotiate with President Trump, they're entering a battlefield that says you need to bring your bunker buster of knowledge as you begin to negotiate with the United States. They're not playing, and they need to know the stakes are very high, but also stakes that are going to take Africa where Africa can actually truly beneficiate and benefit from their natural resources in a manner that is not parasitic, like the relationship African countries have had with Europe. So the United States is saying no more parasitic relationships, but may the best men win. Africans are supposed to come to the United States with their best negotiators, and they need to leave the best deal that can be had on behalf of their people. The people who chose them to lead, the people who are expecting them to do what they must do in order to utilize their natural resources for the benefit of their people, and not the relationship African countries have had with Europe. So
what would you have advised President Ramaphosa to do? When Ramaphosa went into the White House, he was facing, really what were fake videos of white genocide in South Africa. And I love all the countries in Africa, but let's just face it, South Africa is a heavyweight economy, geopolitically of a very high standing. They're facing 30% tariffs in the letters that President Trump has articulated to the world. You had Senegal, Guinea-Bissau, Mauritania, Liberia, and Gabon, all great countries, but even together, not really the size and scale of South Africa. What would you have had him do that he didn't do, Arikana, to get a better deal? Because I think a lot of other major states in Africa are looking at the example you just talked about and said, how can we get it right when we have to deal with President Trump?
Well, take, for example, President Trump wanted to beat the team down before he finally went to discuss the real issues. When President Trump showed the photographs of crosses along the highway, that was a no-brainer. Instead of President Ramaphosa saying, well, I've never seen that, I would have to look into that, he should have said, categorically, that is not my country. We do not put grave sites along highways. If there were that many white people that had been murdered by black people, I would know. And I can tell you categorically that those photos are not coming from my country. When he was shown photographs of people in body bags, one of his people could have equally looked at that picture and asked AI. In a matter of seconds, you would have found out that those photographs were coming from the DRC. But instead, once again, he should have said categorically, that is not happening in my country. If there were that many white people being killed by black people in my country, I would know. But instead, again, he was, well, I don't know. I'm going to have to look into it. Let me tell you, he was defeated right from the beginning. He was not prepared. He did not have his game together. And then when he asked the foreign minister, the Minister of Agriculture, who is a white man and who is over the land reform in South Africa, he expected the white man to cover him and say categorically, I am a white man. I am the Minister of Agriculture, and we are carrying out the land reform. There is no white genocide in South Africa. But what did the minister say? Well, Mr. President, you are right. We have a problem. What on earth were they thinking? And then at the end of it all, they're busy talking about golf. I think these guys who came with President Ramaphosa, they came just to shake hands with President Trump and then talk about golf. They were not serious about the discussions at hand. So yes, I have to say, I blame President Ramaphosa. He did not take a position of a leader. He should have categorically said, there is no white genocide in my country. And those photographs, Mr. President, they are false. That is not happening in my country. But instead, he looked like a puppy dog that had been beaten up and really could not answer. He looked like a leader who really didn't know that those horrible things could be happening in your country, and you do not know. African leaders need to know that President Trump and his team are not playing. It is a battlefield when you go to the White House. You need to go to that battlefield with your boxing gloves of knowledge, with your bazookas of knowledge, with your bunker busters of knowledge. No playing games, because you got 1.4 billion people counting on you. It's a game changer. When we look at the global policies that President Trump is introducing to the world, when he got rid of USAID, technically he was basically weakening the CIA, the agents through which regime changes have been carried out. We need to celebrate that. When President Trump is saying, let's come to the table and negotiate as equal, we need to celebrate that. When we lose on that battlefield, the joke is on us. So African leaders, I am saying, wake up. A new era is being introduced. Let's take advantage of it, and let's put in our best negotiators. Let's put our best foot forward, and may the battle begin.
Adikana, one of the other things President Trump said, I found it very, very interesting, because not as many people in my country, in the United States, are aware of the dimensions there. But President Trump said, there's a lot of anger down there in Africa. Those were almost his exact words. And he says, we need to help put out some of that anger. And he got involved in a way that I found surprising in the long-term conflict between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda. And there have been a lot of people skeptical on whether the deal is stable or not, but a lot of people applauding both Secretary of State Marco Rubio and President Trump's involvement in that deal. How is that resonating? Is that enhancing Trump's brand and America's brand in the region? Or is that issue between the DRC and Rwanda not as resonant as some of us think it is?
I think the devil is in the details. Most of us are waiting to see exactly what are the details of these negotiations. We do not want a new situation where the United States is basically replacing what China has been doing in the DRC, what the Europeans, particularly France, have been doing in the DRC. What I'm hoping is that, just like what China did when China decided to come and move into Africa, they looked at what it is that the United States and Europe were getting wrong. A lot of it was limiting funding to African countries. So China came in, found a loophole, found a weakness in the US and European strategy, and they came in with just pouring monies into African leaders. President Trump should look at it and say, what has China done wrong? Because right now, a lot of people are very angry at China. I know many countries that I've visited. If you go to the countryside with a Chinaman, they'll run you off because they're sick and tired of what the Chinese are doing in Africa. The United States need to look at it and say, what is it that China is doing that's making Africans so angry? They come up with a different angle, but let's look at trading with Africans in a fair and equitable manner. I do not know what the details are for the agreement between the US and DRC and Rwanda. But what I would hope is that they were negotiations that are fair, negotiations that are equitable, negotiations that will, in due course, if this is a situation where the United States is trying to take advantage of the Africans, it's just a matter of time before everything boils over. So it behooves the United States to treat Africa fairly. For a change, let's have a country that can trade with Africans in a fair manner. All I'm asking is for Africans, don't be stupid anymore. Do not come to the United States looking like beggars. You have a lot that the United States wants. You have a lot that the world wants. Stand up tall. Have the to stand up like any other man on earth and defend us. As Africans, we are counting on you. We are sick and tired of giving up our natural resources for peanuts. So yes, African leaders, do not come to the United States as beggars. Come to the United States as equals to negotiate with President Trump. Do not take any rubbish that he throws at you. Do not allow him to bully you, because he has what you need and you also have what he has what you want. So this is about trade. We are going back to the basics. Our leaders, before the colonizers came to Africa, the different tribes traded as equals. We're going back to that environment. Let's embrace it. Let's look at it for what it is, and may the best men win. Africans, wise up. Come to the United States prepared, because President Trump will trump you. President Trump will kick your rear end if you're not prepared. We saw what happened with President Ramaphosa.
I would say, Ambassador, listening to you, let the best man or woman win, because you're in this action as well. So just want to, acknowledge your role and voice in this. But let me ask you here. I mean, you and I have talked about how many of the colonial countries, or the United States, would use aid and development and poverty programs, not just to help those in need, but as tools of control, tools of exploitation from your perspective. But I want to raise something. Is there not a concern that you have that we've gone too far, that the shutting down of USAID programs and some of these international programs may be cutting too deeply, and maybe we need a better balance? I'm just interested in your perspective on that. Or is it good that everything is just basically cut off?
Everything should be cut off. We don't need aid. How long have we been getting aid, and what do we have to show for it? It has been an instrument of making sure that they keep Africa where they want Africa to be. Let it all go. We need trade, not aid. Trade with Africans fairly. They do not need the aid. If you look at what is coming out of Africa, through other nations, through exploitation of our natural resources, there is no comparison to the aid. Let's trade with Africa fairly. That's why I'm saying the era that President Trump is ushering in is an era that we must embrace as Africans, but let's be wise. Let's not sell. Let's not mortgage our children's future. We do not need aid. They all must go. When you look at the damage that they are creating in Africa, people need to understand. When you would see a clinic that was run by USAID, most of those activities were in areas that are mineral rich. That clinic is being used as a way of monitoring the uranium, to making sure that the minute somebody starts digging, where is that uranium going? They're keeping an eye on the natural resources. So let's make no mistake about it. If it was about looking for poor people, there are plenty of poor people. Tell it to Mayor Bass in Los Angeles. Tell it to the governor of the state of California. Tell it to the mayor of New York City. The homeless people in Los Angeles, the homeless people in New York City. Tell it to the governors of the states, the southern states. There are people who still don't have electricity and running water. Where are the signs for USAID? Don't stop putting wool over our eyes. It's not about gallivanting around the world, going around 10,000 miles away from the United States looking for poor people, when there are millions of poor people right here in the United States. Charity begins at home. Let's be serious, people. Do not be fooled. USAID was not going to Africa looking for poor people. Far from it. They have a different agenda. There are poor people here, right here in America. And until we start seeing USAID flags in the streets of Los Angeles taking care of all the homeless people, until we start seeing USAID flags in the reservations, American Indian reservations, where they don't have electricity and running water. Come on now, talk to me. That's a facade. We're tired of it. They all need to go. Africa needs trade and not aid.
I think deep down there are other issues like the flow of migrants, the youth in Africa that wants to be out there, where Donald Trump seems to be very, very keen on stopping that flow of migrants from Africa to places like the United States, you know, and securing minerals and metals. I'm just interested in the reality and the substance. Do you think these leaders that were there, these 5 leaders, did well, or were they overly obsequious to a president who wanted to cut off Africans, many Africans, from coming to the United States?
To be honest with you, these leaders need to come with the attitude that they have something that President Trump wants. Your people need to stay in your country. Just like the United States, the people need to stay in their country. You can't come in here and beg for you people to come to another president's country. That's just not a good negotiating point. They need to come here to talk about trade. Because if they trade fairly, they can use their natural resources to make sure that they improve the quality of lives for their people. The reason these young people are trying to leave Africa is because there are no opportunities for them. They don't see a future. So they're trying to go somewhere else to find a way out. But if the opportunities are there, I can tell you, the average African wants to stay home. They know that it is difficult going abroad. It is difficult coming to the United States. It is difficult coming to Europe. They know the hazards of living. But in some cases, we leave these young people without a choice. So if we can use our natural resources to improve their quality of lives, to give them the opportunities that they need, nobody would leave Africa. That's just the fact. So yes, we have been exploited for far too long. That exploitation has got to come to an end. And our leaders are the only ones who can stop that. So we are tired of this stupidity. We are tired of having idiots running our countries in Africa. Too many of the governments, they have people who are working for the government, who are on the payrolls of foreign nations. So these leaders are also working under difficult conditions because some of our governments are heavily infiltrated by their own people. So we have a lot of cleaning up that we need to do as Africans. But the leaders need to know, game is over. Young people are tired, and we are counting on them this time to do the right thing. We are a rich continent, rich countries with a lot of natural resources, that there is no reason why Africa should not be moving forward, rich as we are. That has got to come to an end. And as Africans, we're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And we're just giving a warning to our heads of states to say, you need to shape up or shape out. We're tired.
Well, I just want to say thank you as usual. What a wide-ranging and feisty conversation with my dear friend, Ambassador Adikana Chihombori-Quao, the former representative of the African Union here in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. As usual, keep up the good work, and we appreciate all the work that you're doing, spreading the truth and nothing but the truth about what is really going on in our beloved continent and our beloved Earth.
Adikana, thank you. So what's the bottom line? Trump has always sent signals that Africa just doesn't matter to the United States. But now, in his second term, he's sending new signals that he wants to do business with African nations on a win-win basis, kind of like China. The 5 leaders he invited to the White House have things he wants: gold, cobalt, nickel, gas, uranium, and lithium, or you name it. America is handicapped if it can't secure these materials that China's been locking down in long-term contracts for years. The great scramble for Africa is still underway. And even when Trump pretends not to care, he knows he needs Africa a lot more than he realized the first time he was president.